Hey there, welcome. My name is Jessica Buchanan, and I'm a New York Times bestselling author, professional speaker, and founder of Soul Speak Press, a non-traditional publishing company created for women who've been through something, now they know something, and they can teach us something. In Her Words is a podcast designed to support aspiring memoir authors on their writing and publishing journey. It's hard work, this writing and publishing stuff, and I want to empower you with encouragement and information so you can keep sharing your truth. So grab your coffee, your notebook, find a quiet space, and let's dive in. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to In Her Words. I'm your host, Jess Buchanan. I am so excited to not be just sitting here talking at you for the next 30 minutes by myself, and to be joined by a remarkable woman, our very first published author through Soul Speak Press. She was our first memoir manifesto. Ellen Busch. I'm just so grateful for your time this morning. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us, Ellen.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to speak with you, and thank you for having me on as a guest.
So why don't we start at the very beginning? How did you happen to find me? How did we even connect?
Great story.
Yeah.
This is something I've written about in my book, but I have been a student of Mark Devine.
Yep.
Commander Devine is a retired Navy SEAL,
Mhm.
and he has a training program for civilians.
Yes.
And it is not about jumping out of planes and shooting guns. It is about self-development and growth and learning to thrive. And he has podcast.
Yeah.
And he had you on as a podcast guest.
Yes.
And I listen to his podcast pretty much weekly.
Yeah.
In fact, when I drive up to the mountains to go skiing, I usually listen to it on the way
Yeah.
up.
It's a great podcast. I still remember that episode, by the
Yeah,
way.
it was amazing.
Yeah.
And I was just, your story is so incredible. It's, you're so focused and, kind of gripping the steering wheel, listening to your story. And at the very end of your podcast, Mark asked you, well, what are you doing right now?
Mhm.
And you mentioned that you were starting a publishing company and you were focused on women's voices. And my reaction was, wait, what? What? And I was just getting to the point where my manuscript was really complete.
Mhm.
And talk about divine timing.
Mhm.
I was talking with my writing coach about, what direction am I going to go in? Am I going to self-publish? Am I going to write, approach some of the traditional houses? What's my plan here?
Yeah.
And then you just kind of popped up, and thanks to the universe. And
Mhm.
before that podcast was over, I was on your website and I had an appointment with you.
I didn't know that.
Yes,
That's amazing. Boy, you're a get it done kind of girl. That's for
I
sure.
am. Well, yeah, I've learned that works really well.
It does. You're my favorite kind of client.
Yes.
Okay, so that's interesting. In terms of the fact that you already had a manuscript finished when you came to us, right?
Right.
And how long had you been working on your manuscript?
I had been working on it for a good 5 years.
Wow. Now
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
something. And I think that that's really important to share with authors who are struggling through their
Yeah.
memoirs right now.
Yeah.
Um, you're a get it done kind of girl, and it still took you 5 years to get through it. Why don't
Yeah.
you talk us through a little bit of that process and what that was like for
Sure.
you?
You know, I didn't, I knew I had a story to tell, and I I thought about writing for a long time. I didn't do a lot of writing at first.
Mhm.
And then I just got to the point where it was time. And I knew I needed help. And I
Mhm.
think, this is one of the themes throughout this process is asking for and getting help.
Yeah.
And I found a writing coach who was absolutely amazing, and I'm very sorry to say has retired.
Yeah.
Um, and when she told me she was retiring as we were nearing the end of the book, I panicked.
Yeah.
Kind of one of the few things that will make me panic is when my writing coach tells me she's retiring.
I'd
So
say that I'd say that's necessary, a
yeah,
reaction. That's,
exactly.
you know.
I just approached it like I approached working on my bachelor's degree or a
Mhm.
master's degree. It was going to be a long-term project.
Yes.
And I knew to just pick away at it and work at it, 2 weeks at a time. I would have meetings with my coach, and we we would do them every 2 weeks. And
Hmm.
I would work on a chapter. I would send it to her. She would send me some feedback in a video, and then I would work on it again, and then we would meet. And that just became a very regular routine.
Hmm.
Now, I think one of the things that was kind of unique to my situation was when I started writing, and what evolved in those 5 years would become very important chapters in that book. And I
Yeah.
didn't know that. So there were chapters to live before I could write them.
Okay, so talk to us more about that. What do you mean by that?
Sure. So it evolved from just a survival story to
Mhm.
a healing and a thriving story.
I love that. Beautiful. And that's what separates a memoir from a memoir manifesto.
Yeah, yeah. So I had to live those chapters of healing. I had to
Right.
live those, and I also had some losses there too. I lost my dad in the middle of this process.
Yes, yes, yes,
And, I wrote about that. And
yes.
then I learned, I wrote about the growth that I experienced in training with Mark Divine,
Yeah.
and I would say, massive, massive growth with him.
Yes.
And that really is how I transformed from survivor to thriver.
Yeah.
And I hadn't yet lived those chapters when I started writing. So those things needed to happen. So I
Hmm.
think in my case, it really needed to be a very long time.
Hmm.
I think everybody's situation is going to be a little different.
Hmm. And
So,
that's so interesting too, because I think a lot of times we think that maybe meaningful writing can't come when you're in the middle of something, you know?
right.
Oftentimes, I think the old adage is that memoir should be written many years post so that you have the opportunity of hindsight and you've like had time to learn those lessons and articulate those, but you were doing it in real time. And
Hmm.
I think also there's a separation too, from like experiencing the trauma and writing about it in real time and then experiencing the healing and
Yes.
writing about that in real time.
Yes.
And that is what I found to be so moving about and just so inspiring. I think about you every time I'm doing like a new workout or something
Oh my gosh, thanks.
because of the CrossFit journey that you went on. And I always think about, I think you were like throwing a kettlebell or you were doing something and you just
Hmm.
kept going and you hit 100 and then more, you know. So every time I feel like I'm about ready to pass out on the Stairmaster or something, I think about you and the kettlebell and that story. Like those things, those they stick with us. They because they're so inspiring. Um, why don't you tell us a little bit about your book and what
Sure.
stories you included in there? Just, you know, just a little teaser, because really I'd love for everybody who's listening to this to go out and buy your book, and we'll get to that in a little while. But tell us a little
Sure.
bit about your survival to thriving story.
Sure. So my story really begins in childhood. When I was 6 or 7 years old, I was diagnosed as dyslexic.
Hmm.
And despite living in an affluent community in New York City suburb, a great school system, the belief system at the time was that it was an intellectual disability, and I was written off.
Hmm.
I was written off. I was treated as a second-class citizen. My parents just said, no, we're not going to accept that. Thank God.
Hmm.
Um, and they supported me all the way through school. My parents were told college was out of the question, focus on
Hmm.
finding her a husband. And really awful, awful
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
By today's standards, that administrator would have been fired.
Sure.
Yeah. Um, I had to academic success, and I went on to college, and I went on and earned a master's degree. So I did everything they said I couldn't do.
Right.
But the problem is that my self-esteem and self-worth were destroyed.
Hmm.
I used to joke and say I didn't have low self-esteem, I had no self-esteem. because it wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
You were a broken, brain damaged, dyslexic child, and that's just how it was. And you needed to accept that.
Mm.
And something inside of me just said no. And it was also because I had parents who said, no, we're not going to accept this.
Yeah.
Um, and despite having those successes, I didn't understand that the trauma and the emotional, the emotions that I was carrying around of low self-esteem and low self-worth were just destroying my life.
Mm.
I was consistently underemployed, dating men who were just not worthy of me,
Mhm.
and ended up married to a narcissistic man
Mhm.
who was psychologically abusive.
Mhm.
We had an incident of physical abuse. Um, I ended up escaping,
Mhm.
planning and executing an escape, which was
Mhm.
terrifying.
Mhm.
But I got out, and I got out alive. Not everybody does,
Yeah.
which is heartbreaking and awful.
Yeah.
Um, and when I got out of that relationship, I reached my surrender point
Mm.
and just realized I was so traumatized. I was driving through red lights and stop signs.
Mm.
I could barely function.
Yeah.
And I knew I was in trouble, and I knew I needed help. And I made myself a promise. And the promise is that that was never going to happen to me again.
Yeah.
And then I got to work.
Mhm.
I got to work with coaches and therapists, and then I stumbled upon Mark Devine's program where I really learned to thrive and have completely rewritten and recreated my life,
Mhm.
and the life that I want and on
Yes.
my terms.
Yes. Yes.
So, and now I live here in Colorado, and I ski the Rockies
Yes.
every weekend, all winter long. And that's what I wanted. That's
Yeah.
the life I wanted to create.
Yeah.
So,
Beautiful. Oh, it's amazing. And the thing that keeps resonating and ringing in my heart is that you got to work.
yeah.
I think I'm a woo meets the work kind of person, but really I think we miss that opportunity, and we miss that point that getting to the thriving stage is it's a relentless journey that
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
just keep, I mean, you are doggedly trying to get to that next phase of healing. And I that resonates with me so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for me, part of my healing journey has been writing about everything that I've been through, in the last 10, 12 years. And now I'm starting to think about writing about all the things that happened to me before the big T trauma. I had lots of other
Right.
trauma. Yeah. So moving into that next level of healing,
Yeah.
were there moments in the 5 years that you were writing this manuscript where you're like, I just have to walk away. This is too painful. I need some time.
No, but that's kind of my dogged personality.
Mhm.
So, one of the things, or one of the advantages I learned as a very young child was that if I didn't quit, I won.
Okay, say that again.
If I didn't quit, I won. Every day that I didn't quit on myself was a winning day.
So beautiful, Ellen.
Yeah. So that it was that internal drive of just saying, nope, I'm going to prove you wrong. My dad and I had this mantra when I was you're talking first, second grade, and I would be crying and frustrated over my homework. And he'd say, Ellen, one question at a time,
Yep.
prove them wrong. You know you can do it. And
Mhm.
I internalized that.
Yes.
And, one of the things that that I've written so warmly and affectionately about my parents, because if I didn't have them, I
Yeah.
would not have survived.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Oh,
mhm.
it's just beautiful. I love that so much. And it reminds me of, I guess we can move on to then the publishing conversation.
Yeah.
Um, but I want to make sure I say this before I forget, even if I'm jumping ahead. I remember sending you an email on the day of your launch
Oh,
and
yes.
you had hit #1 bestseller. And I don't remember which category, but you'd hit all the #1s.
Yeah.
And all you wrote back was 2 words:
Hmm.
I won.
I won.
And
Hmm.
I was just like,
Yeah.
damn,
Yeah. And
power.
yeah. And you want to talk about a long battle? When you think
Yeah.
about that,
Yeah.
it was a 47-year battle.
Yeah. Yeah. I
I
mean,
was,
here you are with
yeah,
a dyslexia diagnosis writing a bestseller.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, you won.
yeah. By every standard possible. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's amazing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about publishing
sure,
and why you decided to go the route that you chose with me. And
sure.
I when we were talking before we hit record, I was like, if it's not putting you on the spot too much, I don't really know why you decided to work with me. I'm glad, I'm grateful.
Yeah,
But you were the first author to trust me, outside of the anthology that I was working on. Um, and I'm always grateful for that. You gave me a shot. You gave
yeah,
me a chance, and we worked our hearts out for you. But yeah, talk to us a little bit about that and why you
sure.
decided to go this route.
You know, one of the things I've learned is to listen to the universe and the messages that are coming at me.
Yes.
And I don't know if you realize, but your rescue date or anniversary
Mhm.
and my escape anniversary are 1 year and 1 day apart.
Oh, I'm not sure I did realize that.
Yeah.
Before or after?
Well, you were January 23rd or 24th?
25th.
25th. Okay, I escaped on the 23rd. So one year and 2 days apart.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean that's crazy.
Yeah, isn't that strange? So, so I kind of I started off with some conversations with Kate, my writing coach.
Mhm.
And we talked about self-publishing. We talked about maybe doing a book proposal and what that would entail.
Mhm.
80 pages and approaching a big publisher and, you know, or a
Trying to
book
get an agent.
agent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, a year or two would go by and I was like, that's just, I just don't think that's the route that I want to go.
Mhm.
And I knew I didn't want to go down the self-publishing route because I wanted to, whatever I was going to put out there, I wanted to be absolutely professional.
Yep.
I wanted, and one of the things that I consistently get on my reviews is that it is edited beautifully and there are no mistakes.
I love hearing that.
I can send you all the reviews if you'd like to
Oh,
read
I
them.
love that. Because we work so hard to make sure every book we put out is perfect.
And that was, so we had that similar goal. So that was
Yeah.
very important to me.
Yeah.
I've seen some self-published works over the years, and I just thought, you
Yeah.
know, I can do better with the help of a professional.
Yes.
And, once you put it out there, you can't pull it back.
Mm. I mean, you can, but somebody's already bought the copy that
Exactly.
you're trying to fix. So,
Exactly.
yes.
So there was that piece of it. And, the publishing world as an industry, I knew nothing about.
Mhm.
And I knew I needed that help.
Yeah.
Um, but one of the most important things, that you talked about when I first, you know, started talking with you and listening to your podcast is about your focus on raising up women's voices.
Mhm.
And that just resonated with me.
Yeah.
And I just knew that working with you was the right place.
Mm.
It just made sense. And just kind of those weird connections like your rescue date, my escape date,
Mhm.
and finding out from, hearing the podcast with Mark Devine, I just knew, and I was listening to my gut
Mhm.
that working with you was the route that I was supposed to go.
Mm. I love that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so grateful that you listened to your gut, and I'm so grateful that the universe brought us together.
Yeah.
Because it's been such a joy, watching you move through this process and us learning together and working together. And I'd love to know a little bit about what post book launch has looked like for you and what that experience has been like for you.
Sure. And then just to add one other point, your focus on um, raising up women's voices, the whole purpose of my book is to help other people through my story.
Yes.
So there definitely is a mesh there.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Yeah,
with
I mean those are the stories that we're looking for here.
exactly,
You
exactly.
you just check every box for the memoir manifesto,
Yeah.
and it's a beautiful book, you guys. You need to go out and read it. But we'll give you a chance to share all the things in a minute, but tell us a little bit about what that has been like, because
Sure.
one thing I try to get across to authors as we get to their launch date. We at the time of this recording, we have a launch next week, and it's an anthology. So a lot of times I think authors forget
Mhm.
that publishing a book is a long game.
It is.
It's big picture. Um,
Mhm.
Things don't just stop once the book is
Yeah.
available in Barnes and Noble and on Amazon. Like, you
Right.
still have to get out there and hustle to sell it, because you
Right.
can't expect people to find it unless you're talking about it. So,
Right.
tell us a little bit about like what that's been like for you.
Sure. Like you said, it's been a lot of work, but it's a labor of love.
Yes.
Because my story is important to me, and it's part of my hero's journey. So telling that story and helping other people is
Mhm.
one of the drivers.
Yes.
So, I've been really taking it on as an experiment and just trying different things and seeing what works.
Hmm.
I actually went and cold called different bookstores
Hmm.
with my book in hand. And, some people were like, no, no, no,
Yeah.
can't do that.
Yeah.
And then I found,
Independent authors, indie authors. Nope.
right, right, exactly. But there are communities and bookstores out there that really
Mhm.
want to support local authors.
Yeah.
And here's a shout out to Barnes and Noble in Boulder, Colorado. I've
Hmm.
done 3 book signings with them. They have a local authors section. And one of the things that's very important to them, they're on Pearl Street, by the way. I will be there this Saturday.
Oh,
Um,
will you?
I will, yes, I'm
Oh,
doing
that's awesome.
so yeah.
Okay.
But their focus is supporting local authors, and they have a section just for local
Yep.
authors.
Hmm.
So it's finding that niche
Yeah. Yeah.
and finding those people. Oh, excuse me. Um, and they have welcomed me, 3 times.
That's amazing. I
Yes.
love hearing that so much.
And it's just finding those,
Hmm.
in the right community.
Hmm.
Um, Boulder's unique. It's
Yeah.
it's just it is.
Yeah.
And so I have found a place there that has worked really well. The other thing I've done is I've done probably about 20 podcasts at this point.
Amazing. And are you just pitching yourself? Or are you working with someone?
Um, I'm pitching myself. There's actually websites out there that match up podcasters and podcast guests.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it's kind of like a dating website. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. You
And you
got
put
your
your
profile.
profile, yeah. And then you put your profile up, and then you can reach out and they can reach out to you. And I have been doing podcasts all over the world. I
Amazing.
Yeah, US, Canada, the UK, um, South Africa. I've done 2 in Australia.
That's amazing, Ellen. I love that.
That's been wonderful. And it's actually it's kind of interesting with the time difference when you're
Mhm.
when you're scheduling something, it's somebody in Australia. It's a little
Yeah.
bit different.
Yeah, it's true. I have a couple clients in Australia, and actually I have a call with one of them at 7 a.m. on Monday morning.
Exactly. And it's
Uh,
probably Tuesday night for them.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, what I one of my greatest passions that I talk about a lot on here is building an author brand.
Mhm.
And so a lot of, our main tool for building is social media.
Yeah,
What has that been like for you in terms
sure.
of, talking about your book, building relationships, podcast promotion, that kind of thing? Yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit about that too.
Sure. So I found a local person here to help me with the content management,
Okay.
and she creates all of my content.
Okay.
Um, and this is a woman who is running her own business
Uh-huh.
from home. And of
Yep.
course, here I am. This is an opportunity to support another
Yes.
woman in business.
Yep.
And she is wonderful and she is incredibly creative. Um, we just do a small package, but what she does is fantastic.
Yeah.
And she and I work together. She creates the content, and then we kind of go back and forth on things and
Uh-huh.
make sure it's not only the right content, but it's the right timing and things like
Yes.
that. So um, that has been great. I've also
Uh-huh.
done a couple book fairs.
Oh, okay. Tell us about those. I haven't done that one of those.
It's
What's that been like?
it's that has been more of a learning experience than a book selling experience.
Okay.
And there's also, I've joined the Colorado Authors League.
Oh, cool.
So there is, in your state, see if there's a group like that. There may be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they work to get us into bookstores, into book fairs, and the book fairs are fun. You bring your little table and your
Yeah.
tablecloth and your book, and you'll stand up,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
to and you just talk with people. And I haven't sold a lot of books per se, but it's been great meeting other authors
Yeah.
and learning about their experience and what it's been like for them. And many of them are self-published.
Yeah.
Um, but just talking with folks has been a wonderful experience.
Well, I love that. You're building your network, right? Oftentimes, that's what I feel
Absolutely.
like is the most important thing. It's not really about selling the books.
Right.
It's about like the connections that you make because of it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know?
Absolutely.
Um, so before we wrap up here, I'd love to know what was the hardest part about this whole entire process for you and what has been the best part for you,
What has been
if
the
you
best?
can distill that down.
Yeah, yeah. I think the hardest part was moving through the fear.
Mm,
And I had a lot of support. I was doing a group coaching with Mark Devine's program. So I had 6 people supporting me, including you and your
mhm,
staff.
yep,
Um, it was very scary. And I went through this 6-month period of really asking myself the question over and over and over again, do I really want to do this?
yep,
Do I really want to do this?
yep.
And the answer was always yes.
Mm,
So, and then, the other side of that coin is when I don't know if you remember this, but after I said I won, I was in shock for 2 weeks.
yeah,
I
yeah,
really didn't understand what I was feeling.
mm,
And, all those years of fighting for my self-esteem and my self-worth, I finally had over 200 pages of written proof
yeah,
of what I was really capable of,
yes,
and how extraordinary my journey had been and what I had accomplished.
yeah,
I think that was the best part of
yeah,
just it was in my hands. I had proof, and I
yeah.
that I really had beat the system.
Mm, it's just beautiful.
Thanks.
I'm so honored to have gotten to play a small part in that, in helping you get to that place, Ellen. And I'm just always grateful that you trusted Soul Speak Press with such
Absolutely.
an important endeavor. And just, yeah, grateful to know you. If anybody's listening and they want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Sure. I have my website. You can reach out to me through there. It's ellenbusch.com. But it's BUSCH, like the beer. I
I
always
was
say
going to
this.
ask you to clarify that.
Otherwise people spell it wrong. So
Yep.
um, it's not like the president, like the beer, family joke.
That's catchy.
Yeah. Well, and my aunt's name is Barbara Bush, so it's even
That's funny.
yeah, so it is what it is.
It is what
You
it
can
is.
find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook, on Instagram, ebush1500. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out.
Love that. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your experience with us.
Thank you. And I've so enjoyed working with you. I just knew it was the right place.
I love that.
Yeah.
In Her Words is hosted by me, Jessica Buchanan, and is produced by Soul Speak Press, a non-traditional publishing house for women who are ready to tell their story. If you would like to know more about our submission process, I encourage you to check us out at www.soulspeakpress.com or follow us over on Instagram at soulspeakpress. We appreciate all your questions, and if you would like to leave us a review, we would be so grateful.